Hey guys, so this is my functions video. I'm going to be going over two different types of functions, one that returns a value and one that doesn't. So to start, we're actually going to not look at this part of the code. We're going to go on down and we're going to start with what this is about. So it's going to be an input and an output program where we input the number of miles and it's going to give us some data back. So the first thing we are doing is we're declaring the input and the output variables. It's going to be miles and kilometers. The second thing we're going to do is have the user be asked for the number of miles. They can enter any number they want as long as it's a double. So that way we can account for half miles, quarter miles, um, any number. Then we're going to take this mile distance that we've asked the user for, and we're going to put it inside this function. Now the computer doesn't know what kilo to mile means on its own. We had to write that function for it. So up above we can find here is the kilo to mile function. Inside these parentheses is the input value, which is a double, and it's our number of kilometers. And here the double represents the output value, what it's going to be. So we have to declare this miles here just inside the function. What's also interesting is that this value only will live within the scope of this function. On this line we're doing the calculation, so we've taken the input number of kilometers and we're multiplying it by the correct number, and that will produce the correct number of miles. This return line means that the value for miles, which is kilometers now converted to miles, will be what is spit out of this equation or returned out of the equation. We're then taking that value and putting it in the kilo to distance variable, which we had defined earlier as a double. Then in the display the output part, this print statement prints the number of kilometers out, and it has a little script here. So it says the number of whatever the input number of miles is equal to this new calculated number in kilometers, and that's pretty cool. The second type of function, instead of having double, integer, string, or another type of value, has void right here, and that means that this function won't, when it's called, won't return any values. It'll just do whatever is written in the scope of this function. So this one's going to calculate and print out the gas costs. This one could definitely return the values, but just for the sake of this video, it's going to print them within the scope of this function. So it takes in three different variables, and they're two different types. So the miles and the price per gallon are doubles, and the miles per gallon we're just taking in as an integer. I wanted to use an integer and not a double for this, just to show you guys that you can take in a lot of different variable types. They don't all have to be the exact same. Furthermore, we define the cost as a double because it's going to be a calculation involving doubles. So the cost is a pretty easy calculation. It's the number of miles divided by miles per gallon. So that's how many gallons of gasoline we're using, and multiplied by the price per gallon, which is the total price. Here you see we print out this information for each of them. The reason we're going to print it here, or we need to print it here, is because there's no return. These variables only live within the scope of this function and can't be called on out here. So when we call this function, you notice difference to the kilo to miles is we don't set it equal to something, and again that's because it doesn't return any values. And another difference between the kilo to mile function is that it has these three parameters separated by commas. These match the input parameters of miles, miles per gallon, and price per gallon. All right, and so let's see if this works. All right, so now we'll enter the number of miles, and we will do 6.33. So it output the number of miles as 6.3, the number of kilometers as 10.1871, and then we can see our price per gallon and our miles per gallon are the numbers that we entered hard coded in, and the total cost would be $1.23 and a little bit of change.